college basketball. We're going to talk about, tournament outlook, what teams looking like they're in right now, in a sense of, like, they're pretty much safe for the rest of the year. They've built their resume pretty well. So the way I'm looking at it is you got 32 at-large bids. So I take 7 away from that because the way I look at it is it's pretty unlikely that one of the teams that's in a power conference that's not in the tournament already will probably not win their tournament. So you don't necessarily have to worry about, you might have to worry about a bubble team winning a conference tournament, but like you don't have to worry about a really bad team that doesn't deserve to be in the tournament. You don't really have to worry about them taking a spot. So like you can go ahead, it's like what I do is I had 32 at-large bids or 32 automatic bids, and I minus it by 7. So you get 25. So you take 25 away, okay, I got 25 bids that are going to be taken up when the conference tournaments come around. So we know those 25 small schools will get in. And then we're hoping that 7 of the teams, or the power conference teams that I'm already projecting in, will most likely win that tournament. That's the only time we'll lose any at-large bids. So we're looking at 43 at-large bids. 68 teams make the tournament. So we're looking at 43 at-large bids. I have done preview videos for conferences. I'm pretty happy about them. You can go check them out. I did that about a month or so ago, early January. Worked real hard on that. Did conference previews. I'm pretty happy with the conference previews. I did a mid-major monster preview, so you can go check those out. If those are things that you're interested, if you want kind of a preview, if you just picked up college basketball, it's something that you hadn't really been paying attention to that much, those videos are good. A lot of good information in them. Just saying. So let's talk, what teams are looking like they're in right now. As far as at-large bids, now a couple of teams I want to talk about. These are some of the smaller conference teams that have really excelled this year and look really good. You talk about Rhode Island, you talk about Nevada, you talk about Gonzaga, you talk about St. Mary's. Those 4 teams right there are 4 teams that if they don't win their conference tournament, even though they're in a small conference, they are going to take a bubble team out of the tournament if they don't win. And Rhode Island's a team, they play in the Atlantic 10. I don't really see them winning their conference tournament. The Atlantic 10 is a tough conference, and they're at 12-0 right now. And they don't have any losses so far, but to me that doesn't mean that they're not going to lose in their conference tournament, and that's going to open up a spot for somebody else in the A10 to get in. Rhode Island's resume is good enough for them to get in without them winning their conference tournament, so that's good. Nevada's dealing with some issues right now. Caleb Martin, the twin brother of Cody, he's number 10. I know the difference between them. It's very hard to tell the difference between them because they look the exact same. But he's got a boot. He has a Liz Frank injury. He's supposed to be out 6 to 8 weeks. It's a sprain, not a break, so that's good. But it's a weird injury. Foot injuries are kind of hard to come back from. You never know when you can come back from. A Liz Frank injury also, it's on top of the foot, so it's kind of a different type of injury. They played UNLV last night. Now, UNLV has struggled all year with teams that are better than them in the Mountain West. And I kind of figured the same would go last night, but UNLV actually won that game. It was close throughout. Nevada just lost at the end. You could see Nevada really was showing a lot of heart, and they wanted to win that game. And they're not looking for an excuse. They're not looking for excuses that because Caleb Martin's out, they're not going to be able to play. So Gonzaga and St. Mary's, I truly think that they're going to battle it out in the West Coast Conference. I think both of them have had tremendous years. St. Mary's started the year a little bit slow with the 2 losses, but they've won a lot in a row now, and they've beat Gonzaga in that head-to-head matchup. Now they have one more head-to-head matchup going forward, and I'm pretty sure it's at St. Mary's. The last one was at Gonzaga. And another team that, talk about some of the smaller teams, St. Bonaventure. St. Bonaventure, they had wins against Syracuse and Maryland in the preseason. Jalen Adams was hurt, I think, for the one against Maryland. And his first game back was like the Syracuse game. And he's been a shell of himself all year. The teams in the A10 have really learned how to guard him or how to take him out of the game. They're doubling him when he gets a screen. But the last 2 games he's really excelled. He scored 40 the other day against Duquesne, and that was a huge game. for them, and then he scored 44 the other night against, I think, I can't remember who it was, LaSalle or one of the bad teams in the Atlantic 10. So that's kind of just talking about some of those couple of teams that, these are a couple teams that if they don't win their conference tournament, they probably still can get in the tournament. And if I didn't mention them and they're a small team and you're wondering, well, they're pretty good. Like if they don't win their conference tournament, yeah, they're probably out if they don't win. Another team, to talk about Boise State. Boise State is like already like a bubble team right now. And I thoroughly believe if Boise State doesn't win the Mountain West Conference, they're going to give them – that's going to be a big enough reason for them to leave Boise State out. As good as Boise State's been this year, their resume just isn't strong enough for them to get in unless they win the Missouri Valley or the Mountain West Conference. And then I guess to say with the Missouri Valley have just beat themselves up all year. And it's looking like whoever wins the Missouri Valley Conference tournament's going to get in. I truly, that's how I see it. There's a lot, like they're the eighth best conference in college basketball. So like they're one of the better conferences, but the way that their conferences just beat each other up all year, the fact that they don't really have like a lot of like, oh, that's a good win in the preseason type stuff. The team that does have things like that going well for them is Northern Iowa, and Northern Iowa is at the back of the pack. They've played like shit all year. So let's talk about the power conferences. Let's talk about the American's probably the seventh conference. At the back end of it, Wichita State and Cincinnati are definitely in. Wichita State, very good team. Cincinnati, very good team. They played very good this year. And Houston, Houston's undefeated at home, which isn't even their home. They play at Texas Southern. The Fertilla Center is getting renovated this year. SMU they've lost Shaq Milton the last couple of games, and they have definitely hit a wall. I don't see them really making the tournament unless they can come through and win the American or something like that. They have just too many losses. The American is a lot better than it's been in the past. These middle of the road teams that have definitely became better. Temple's a team that had the second toughest schedule going into the year. They have wins against like Clemson and Auburn, and those wins are looking better and better all year. If Temple can sustain some momentum and maybe beat a Cincinnati, a Wichita State, get some wins in the American Conference, they're a team that we can continue to talk about, maybe being a bubble team, maybe getting in. But at the same time, they have struggled here in the American. They've lost some close games that they need to win. And other than that, I like Tulsa, but Tulsa is definitely on the back. Way back, they're going to have to win a conference tournament to even, really talk about that. And if I didn't mention them in the American, then they're out. So I like Wichita and I like Cincinnati. Houston is the most likely team to get in the tournament, but I'm still not completely sold on Houston even. And then Temple would be the next team, SMU. And SMU to me would be a tournament team if they had Shaq Milton, but losing him and they have done nothing but lose since he's gone out doesn't look good for them. All right, let's talk about the Pac-12. The Pac-12 is ass turds this year. The Pac-12 is, Conference of Champions, as Bill Walton likes to call it, but it's looking less and less like Conference of Champions all the time. And it's really, at the first of the year, the thing that was looking really good for them was the fact that they had Arizona State. Arizona State beat Xavier. Arizona State beat who else? They beat Kansas at Kansas. They were looking really, really good at the first of the year, and since conference play start, they not only have they shot the ball the worst they've shot it all year, but they also are like losing games. They're at the back of the pack at the Pac-12. They're 6-6 right now. They had a big win against USC last night, but I still have them in for what they did in the preseason. I'm just not as high on them as I was at the first year. I thought this could be a really good team, a really scary team in the tournament. And unless they get really hot again and get on that streak like they were, this is not a team that I think will do a whole lot in the tournament. Arizona's for sure in. Arizona's like one of those teams. There's teams like Purdue, Villanova, Virginia that are just really talented, and they play really good as a team. And there's some teams that have a lot of talent on their team. You talk about Kentucky, Arizona, Duke, or Arizona is one of those teams that has a ton of talent on their team. Really good team. And they had like 2 or 3 losses to start at the first of the year in this tournament in the Bahamas, and they've done really good since then. They lost to UCLA last night, which was tough. But I like them. I think they're definitely in a year where the Pac-12 usually Pac-12 gets 5 to 6 teams. We're looking at maybe 4 to 5 this year. For sure, for sure 3 teams, but maybe 5. USC is the other team that's for sure in. I like USC. USC's been good. They're kind of building off how they played last year. And then bubble teams, UCLA. UCLA is right on the bubble. That win against Arizona at Arizona last night is going to be a good win. They're probably sitting right at the back end of the tournament right now. Oregon is definitely in a rebuild. Dana Altman's one of my favorite coaches, so I always kind of leave them in the bubble or to see if they can turn it around, because I knew this team wasn't going to be that good at the first of the year, and I thought maybe they would turn it around as the year goes on, but they really haven't. So they're kind of a bubble team, but on the back burners. Washington has played surprisingly well. Mike Hopkins has done a great job. I hadn't seen that arena, that field, and that packed the way it's been this year in a long time. I really love what he's doing with that. And I think if there's enough spots available, Washington's a team that can get in. Washington is not bad. Stanford started Pac-12 play really hot. They had a couple of really close games that they came out on top. They started off 5-1. They had a really good game against Arizona. And if you're one of the people that didn't pay attention to college basketball and then you started paying attention to college basketball right when the conference tournament started, you would have been like, damn, this Stanford team is pretty good. Man, I think Stanford's going to be in the tournament. And that's how you get duped, is when you don't pay attention to shit all year. And Stanford, they've played like ass the last couple of weeks, been getting slaughtered lately. I mean, they beat Oregon by a good amount at home, but then they lost by 15 to Utah. Basically, the Pac-12 is whoever's playing at home wins. If you're playing at home, you win. If you're playing on the road, you lose. So that doesn't show that this conference is any good. If you can't win games on the road, I don't care about you in the NCAA tournament. Utah is right here with all these other teams, these Oregons, these Washingtons, these Stanford. They're just they win at home, but they can't win on the road, and they get slaughtered on the road. So you just I don't really feel bad for you. I'm not really trying to get you in or nothing like that. And then let's talk Big East. Big East, Nova and Villanova and Xavier are really good this year. And top 5 teams. Seton Hall's another really good team. Seton Hall's a team that's veteran, and they usually take care of business at home. They kind of struggle on the road, so they're a team I'm kind of hesitant to say they can go deep in the tournament, but they have a lot of different pieces that bode well for a tournament run. Creighton lost Martin Crampel earlier in the year, and they just kind of haven't been the same since that. He was a really good player for them, and I knew that his impact was going to definitely derail their season a bit. They're going to still make the tournament. They could win their first game, but I don't see a whole lot out of Creighton. They do have a really good lockdown defender in Kyrie Thomas and a good scorer in Marcus Foster. Butler's probably the surprise team out of the Big East for me. They were a bubble team, going into the year, and I wasn't that sold on Butler, but Butler's really played good in conference play. They got a good win against Villanova. And they play close against your Seton Halls, your Xaviers, your Creightons, and if you're going to have your Xavier and Seton Hall and Creighton in, I'm going to have Butler in too. And then the bubble teams of the Big East, Marquette, Providence. Now, Marquette was, I think, 13-6, and they lost 4 games in a row. They lost 3 home games, and that was reason enough for me to say, y'all aren't playing good enough right now. Y'all are not really doing, you're not taking care of your business at home. And so, to me, I pushed them to the back burners, and then they got a win against Seton Hall earlier this week, so that helped. They're going to be a team that's right on the bubble at the end of the year. Providence is a team that's going to be right on the bubble at the end of the year. Providence is one of those teams that they're always said to be better than they are, and then they come into the season and they're just kind of like what Providence has always been. So it's one of those things. If there's enough spots, Providence, Marquette will get in, but they're kind of on the back burners as of right now. Let's talk Big Ten. Big Ten is shitty again. Not again. It's very shitty this year. Minnesota was a top team at the first of the year, and I saw them making a deep tournament run, and then they lost Reggie Lynch, and you said, well, that's just one player, but Reggie Lynch is not just one player. He holds down the entire defense. He makes it that Jordan Murphy didn't have to do as much on defense, and now Jordan Murphy's having to exert so much energy on both ends. Amir Coffey's been out with a shoulder injury, and Nate Mason and Jordan Murphy can only do so much, and this team is not going to make the tournament now. I feel bad for them. I feel like, the Patinos are just getting blackballed all the damn time, but whatever. Anyway, anyways, so bubble teams, Maryland's lost like 3 key guys. Maryland's a team that I don't even care if they get in or not. I would like for them to just continue to lose, so we don't have a reason to put them in. Because at the first year, they were a team that looked like a tournament team that you thought, okay, they could probably finish like 5th or 6th in the Big Ten, and that'll get you in. Because usually about the top 6 or 7 teams out of the Big Ten get in. And then Penn State's been good, but Penn State can't win on the road. They handle their games at home, but they can't win on the road. So they're a team that it's like if there's a couple of spots available, they might get in. But if they're not, if there's not a couple of spots available, I really don't feel bad. And then Nebraska has one of the worst resumes out there, and then they don't really have a way to really build on their schedule. They've already played a lot of their tough games. They did have a good win against Minnesota, but the refs were all over that one, knowing that Minnesota's not getting in the tournament, and it's going to help Nebraska a lot more for their resume. And the Big Ten's at a point where they really are only looking at 4 teams right now. You talk about Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Purdue. Thank God Ohio State hasn't been dog shit this year, because if not, this conference will be straight dog shit. So we're talking Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, Purdue, and if I was going to say one more, I'd say Nebraska or Penn State, but I really don't like them. Nebraska is all right. It's kind of like Nebraska over the last couple of years. Nebraska has just been so ass for so long. So they're not really going to do a lot. Now, James Palmer's a really good player, though. I will say that. Let's see. Next, let's go SEC. SEC, to me, this is a conference that's definitely going to get more teams than it's been getting in the past. And Kentucky's going to get in, Florida's going to get in. They're playing mediocre in their conference, but these are teams that are going to get in. Alabama will probably get in. Arkansas will probably get in. And then Tennessee and Auburn have definitely excelled this year. They're really doing really good. They're doing a really good job with their coaches. Rick Barnes of Tennessee, Bruce Pearl of Auburn. I thought Auburn would be a team that would be better next year with the young team that they have, but they said they ain't waiting until next year. We're playing this year. And then A&M started really slow. I had them projected as a top team in the SEC, and guess what? They're 5-6 now. They've got about 5 teams in front of them that are 6-5. And so, like I said in my original video, by the end of the year, A&M will be right back at the top. And that's what's going to happen. They'll be right back up at the top with Auburn, Tennessee. They got a big win against Auburn the other day at Auburn. And it's the thing, I knew A&M had it in them. A&M's been playing like a shell of themselves for weeks, and they're finally getting back on track. Now, Missouri's a team that's a big deal, because Missouri is really not that good. When you look at Missouri's team, they're really not that good. They don't have Michael Porter. And they lost Terrence Phillips a couple weeks ago. So they've got an all right team. If they're hitting threes, they're pretty good. But for some reason, there's been a lot of push to get them in, and it really reminds me of back when LSU had Ben Simmons. Their resume was total garbage. It was total ass. But all year you heard, LSU might get in, and it's just to showcase these top players. So I wouldn't be surprised if Missouri gets in. We've been hearing that Michael Porter is going to come back all year, and I think it was one of those things about halfway through the year he said, "Oh, this team's not going to make the tournament. We're not good enough to make the tournament, so I'm definitely not coming back." But now it's like, "Oh, we might be good enough to make the tournament," and he decided he's going to come back now. And I don't know if this is some stunt to be like, oh, look how much better I make this team, and if they go deep, is it going to make an NBA draft, NBA scouts? Is it going to make them just like, oh, just get all over him now because he led his team that he didn't play with all year to deep into the tournament? I don't really know. Other than that, out teams that are out, Vanderbilt, Georgia's just played like shit, and they haven't won a game that they need to win all year. Mississippi State has definitely surprised. I don't see them getting in, but they've definitely surprised and won some good games lately. Ole Miss is not bad, but they're at the back half. LSU, Will Wade's doing a great job with that team, but they're years away. And then South Carolina is definitely in a rebuild after losing all those seniors last year. Let's talk Big 12. Big 12 to me, Kansas, Texas Tech, Oklahoma, West Virginia definitely in. And then bubble teams, TCU, Texas, Kansas State. Kansas State was a team that wasn't to me that high. I wasn't high on them going into them at the first of the year. But they have, they've proved me wrong. They've done a good job. They haven't had Cam Stokes for a while now, and they continue to win or win most of their games. They beat Texas the other day in Texas, and that was a big game. Texas should have won that game. You should win your games at home. And so Texas is a team that is definitely on the bubble. They're like a 9 seed looking like right now around then. So they could definitely play their way out. But I see them getting in. I see it because they played in such a tough conference. They'll let them in. TCU's been playing really like real dog shit in the in the Big 12, and I would not feel bad about leaving them out. Because they have not played good against your West Virginias, your Oklahoma, your Texas Tech, your Kansas. They just have not played good against them. And to me, I think TCU needs a big win to say we can compete with these other good teams, and they just hadn't done it this year. And I think they're a team that's going to creep in, and they're definitely not like a low seed right now, but I think as the year goes on, they're going to go lower and lower and lower. Now, last year there was a lot of like, oh man, they should have made it in. I always feel like the team that wins the NIT is the team that's was the team that should have gotten the tournament the most that got left out. If you win the NIT, that's how I feel. And they won the NIT. So I could see them putting TCU in this year just to see what they are, what they'd be. And then you talk about Baylor. Baylor's been ass. I have Baylor as out. I projected Baylor not to be good this year, but they hadn't been good. They don't really have a good score. And Oklahoma State's got some good wins throughout the year. They could be a team in this back half that gets in if they continue to win these games. A win at Kansas they beat Oklahoma at home. Let's see, I can't remember everything they've done, but they've had some good wins. Also earlier in this year. So I like Oklahoma State maybe if they can continue to play good. Now ACC is definitely the best conference, and we'll probably have the most teams out of it. North Carolina, Duke, they're going to get in. Virginia is one of the scariest teams. Miami's dealing with some injuries, but Miami will get in. Florida State, they'll get in. Louisville will get in. Clemson will get in. All those teams will get in. Clemson, to me, when Dante Grantham went down, I thought that could be really tough for them. They could really struggle, but they've been great without them. They're really good at shooting threes. They got 3 guys that all shoot threes well. And then the bubble teams of this, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and NC State. NC State's a team that is probably the least talented of these teams, but to me, they've had some really good wins. They beat North Carolina. Who else did they beat? They beat North Carolina. I think they played Duke. I think they beat Duke. Yeah, they beat Duke also. So like they have some really good wins on their resume. And they've definitely played. I think they beat Arizona at the first of the year or something like that too. So they have some good wins. They're a team that, if you're comparing teams at the end of the year, NC State will probably get in over another team's resume. Syracuse is like, it's kind of like the lull of Jim Boeheim. They're on the bubble every single year. It's like almost like because they know Jim Boeheim. Jim Boeheim. They know that he can like do so much with less. But this Syracuse team is so bad this year. Tyus Battle and Frank Howard and O'Shea Brissett literally have to do everything, and that's 3 players. So if Syracuse gets left out, I wouldn't feel bad. I feel like St. Bonaventure should get in over Syracuse anyways. They won head to head at Syracuse. So Syracuse is a team I'm really not that high on. I'd be happy to leave them out. And Virginia Tech's a team that I liked at the first of the year, and they have not looked good throughout the year. They haven't won games that they needed to win. And so they're a team that's like if there's enough spots, they'll probably get in, but I'm not vouching for them. They have not taken care of business like they should have. You talk about Boston College, Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's dealing with some scandal right now with Josh Pastner, and he looked guilty as hell in his post-game news conference the other night. He said no He said 0 15 times. He said there is 0, 0, 0 15 times of these allegations being true. And I think that's most of the time when you see people that are like, just don't say anything at all. You know, when your lawyer tells you just don't say anything at all, I think that's why, because you look guilty as hell. Boston College, they're just not that great. They got 3 good players, but that's it. Notre Dame, you know, Bonzi Colson out, and then fucking Matt Farrell decides that he's going to fucking take a little hiatus and have an ankle injury for 4 games or so. So they don't have their 2 best players. And Notre Dame really did start, you know, conference playoff pretty good, but they have just got hit with a fucking train as of lately. Pitt 0-12, you know, we called that. We knew Pitt was going to be ass. And then Wake Forest. Wake Forest was a team that we knew was kind of in a rebuild. They have about 3 good players, but they're like 2-10 or 2-9 this year. So that's what we're looking at. And if you are kind of wondering how many teams I just named off that I feel like are in, I've got 32 teams that I feel like are in right now. And then so that gives you like 11 spots. So we're talking, you know, your Missouri, your Syracuse, Virginia Tech, NC State, St. Bonaventure, TCU, Texas, Kansas State, Nebraska, Penn State, Temple, Houston, Marquette, Providence, UCLA, Washington. Those are the type teams that are going to take those last 11 spots. And then small conferences that are going to take those last couple spots. Obviously, Rhode Island. If Rhode Island doesn't win their tournament, they're going to take one. If Nevada doesn't win their tournament, they'll take one of those spots. So the mid-majors losing their conferences to get another mid-major in, it knocks the Power 5 conferences teams down the podium a little bit. And then Gonzaga and St. Mary's, both of them will get in. So you have to put that into consideration. So of those teams that I named, you've probably got about 9 spots. So you've got about 18 to 19 teams, and you got 9 spots. So this last stretch of the season is so important because it's kind of like you start over, but like you have to do really good at the end of the year. Like you're being compared to all these other teams right now. And I feel like this year is a really weird year in college basketball. The conferences that usually have a lot of teams in them, when you talk about the Big Ten, and who is it? I think the Big Ten and the Big Ten and the Big Ten and the Pac-12. You know, they usually have more teams out of their conference, and I'll say also that the ACC usually has more teams out of their conference. To me, there's only about 8 teams that, you know, are going to make it in. You know, in the past, there's been as many as 12 or 13, you know, ACC teams that could potentially get in. So that's how we're looking there. You know, I'll probably make another video around Selection Sunday. I'll tell you all 68 teams that are going to make the tournament. Because what Joe Lunardi does is not fucking hard. I mean, I do the same shit as him. Like this shit is fucking easy. Like I don't know why they act like. I remember when I was a kid and I thought the shit Joe Lunardi did was just like off the wall crazy. Shit's fucking easy.
Yeah, hop in the Benz, I put it up on the rim. Chuck about all in my crib. Louis V, dummy up. If Frank Miller look like Cartier, walk inside the mall and give me something well. Bitch, I can't find the stuff I could never kill. I was fucked up with broke, you was never there. But the fuck is a friend? They ain't got a hand that can lend.